Welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn. This is Hot Mess and Hot Glue, and I'm 100% the hot mess with all of the hot glue. Today's video is a couple different variations of how to make some Christmas trees using Dollar Tree items.
In this first project, I took this little heart-shaped kind of wood, I want to say it's like a medallion, but it's kind of like a hanging decor that you can find in the crafter section at not at Hobby Lobby, at Dollar Tree. I'm using the color Old Ivy by Folk Art, and this is in a matte finish, and I'm going to give this front and back one good coat. That's really all it needed to get full coverage. I'm just going to take this little stylist and kind of burnishing tool, and I'm going to just kind of create some like swags, I guess, in white, just to kind of give it a little bit of character. Then I'm going to use both the larger and the smaller size kind of ball shapes that are on either end, and just to create some little lights or twinkles and just a little bit more character. And that's all there is to this guy. Now, I feel a little torn. I definitely want to add something towards the bottom of it, but I know it's going to be shelf decor, and so we might not actually see that bottom part, so we'll see. But moving on, I wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit more on the modern side. So taking two of these witch hat wreath forms that I got back in the when like the fall decor was really happening. So I grabbed two of them and I didn't end up using them. But I did not want them to go to waste. So when I looked at them, they spoke tree to me. So just bending at kind of the seams here, I decided that I would kind of take this apart. Now, I thought that cutting it with my tin snips was really necessary, but it was actually much more difficult. It actually hurt my hand. But if I just took the wire and I kind of bent it back and forth and just kind of did that motion with it, everything fell apart much easier. So you absolutely do not need really any special tools for this. As I was bending and moving, I mean, things were falling apart, and I was trying to, try to keep these at two separate lengths because I do have two of them, but in this corner here, it lost its connection. I thought it would be a good idea to try to tape it on and kind of weld it back together using some tape. That didn't work. So I decided just to bend the other part on the other side back and forth and kind of separate that, so that way I just had this freestanding kind of A-shaped Christmas tree to work with. And taking another tree, nope, not another tree, I took another hat, and what I did was I also bent the wires back and forth. I cut them at a slightly higher position. Now, to make the base for this little tree couple, I just decided to use these little boards that I got at Walmart. However, I do have the Dollar Tree ones. These ones were just the ones that were close at hand. And originally I thought just a couple dabs of hot glue was going to be fine, because I originally was thinking that the second tree that I'm bringing in here was going to connect to the larger one. And so I cut it down at that mark where the arrows are. So this one is going to be a little shorter, and it's gonna kind of show more of like the skinnier portion of it, so it'll just have a little bit of size difference. Now, I did staple that lower one because there was something to staple it on, but I was having a really hard time getting the proper connection between this kind of standing Christmas tree here. And I just kind of fiddled around with some different ideas, and even tacking a little bit of glue to the other tree just wasn't working. Now, what I found worked really well was to stick some beads on the bottom. Then I could glue the bead itself to that little, plank platform, and then put a little bit of hot glue even into the bead, so that where the metal was inside of that, it had a little extra support and connection. And here's how these turned out. For this next one, we're going to make a hanging sign. So what I started with were some They were like Christmas tree ornaments. I want to say they were like, they're almost like Easter eggs because they pop apart. And I got them in the Christmas section at Dollar Tree. I took them apart so that I had two halves, and then I spray painted half of them white and half of them in a matte black. And while those were drying, I came in and I started to paint the backside of this beware sign. I really liked the size of it, and I wanted to make something just a little straightforward and easy. Now, I did want to cover up the ridges on the sides of this, so just taking a stir stick that I got on Amazon in a big pack of 100, and it was, I want to say it was like $10 or so, but they don't have the mixing stick handles like they do when you get them from Home Depot. So after applying a gel, no, it was not a gel stain, this was my Waverly antiquing wax. So once I applied the antiquing wax to those stir sticks, I then just gave them a quick little sanding and they were done. So I'm removing the round hanging part off of these like kind of ornaments. You can see the inside of them is green. So after I clip that off, then I'm kind of just spacing them out, seeing how I want them to be, and I'm giving those stir sticks just a little bit more time to dry. Just by applying a little bit of hot glue around the edges, I was able to attach these little trees to this sign just right. Now, in order to make it easier on myself to paint these little decorative half round beads, I put a piece of tape with the sticky part facing up, and then I taped each end of that down so that I could paint these, and when they were dry, all I would have to do is easily peel them off and apply them where I wanted them. So while they were drying, I decided to gather up a couple black beads that I had in my stash and create a small little hanger for this. I just used the jute cord actually that came with it. If I were to hang it in the opposite direction, it would be pretty much the same. Then all I had to do was attach the hanger, and I just used some hot glue to attach those little half round beads to add a little bit of color and dimension to the sides of where I put the stir sticks. Here I saw this little snowflake, and it just kind of looked possibly like some Christmas trees. So I thought I needed to use my my wire cutters, but my regular scissors cut through this just fine. So I just did two of the larger pieces, and then I cut one smaller piece, but I ended up not using it. Now, I just kind of fiddled around with this. I really didn't have a set plan when I went into it. I just kind of was like, oh, this could be a tree. What's something fun I can play around with it? So I started off by attaching them by just gluing them together, and then just kind of squeezing the hot glue gun inside all of the little details and nooks and crannies so that I could get it nice and secure. I also knew I wanted to put some kind of base on this, and so I'm playing around with some Jenga blocks, and I just decided to glue 3 of them together and attach those to the bottom portion. Now, all I have to do on this guy is give it a really good coat of white chalk paint, and then I went over it and I dry brushed using the green color in Old Ivy, again from Folk Arts. Called Family Car. I love the way it had the Christmas tree on top of it. I wasn't actually originally planning on doing this with this little piece here. I just thought it was really cute. So as I like to do is, because I like to, paint over it, start with a blank canvas, but I'm not the best at drawing. So I like to take my tracing paper and kind of copy over the little details and the writing. That way I had the opportunity to kind of transfer them back over. Now, as I was really looking at this, I went on to Google and I looked up the Griswold's car, and I thought, yes, I have to do this. I absolutely have to do this. Now, I've used this technique many times where I trace something, then I place my graphite paper down, and then I just go over the traced lines, and that helps transfer it. Now, I'm usually pretty good at mentioning that you want to have the shiny side down, and I neglected to do that. So I go over all these pieces. I took my time. I mean, I have this sped up for you a smidge so you don't have to just get stuck watching me use a pencil, because I think we know how to use a pencil. But it was pretty funny when I lifted it up and I realized, well, I did that wrong, so let's do it again. So once I got that transferred over, I just went right back over it with my pencil to kind of redefine some of those details on the side of the tree. At first, I was kind of debating if I was going to do a two-tone tree with each layer, and then I just didn't like that too much. I decided, it was at this point that I had decided I was going to do the Griswold car, and so I was like, nope, I don't want to do too much detail on the tree itself because I don't want it to kind of pull away from too much of the detail. So I just painted the trunk in territorial beige, and then I used old ivy, and I just added in some bright green Arteza. It was actually called bright green, and it was kind of like a turquoise color. It was a little strange, but it did add a little color dimension. So to recreate the wood grain on the side of their car, I'm just brushing on a light coat of antiquing wax and kind of scraping my brush across the sides to give it that wood grain effect. Now, the picture that I found on Google did show a pretty bright green colored car, so I went with that, and this one's actually called pale green. And so I just did one coat of that color, and then to recreate the windows, I wanted them to have, you know, just some kind of character and definition, and blue was about as creative as I could get. Once it was all said and done, I did add a little bit of snow to the top because their car was covered in snow. So for this next project here, we've got another one of these little kind of projects that you might overlook thinking that they're for kids, which I say still pick them up for the kids, but I really liked the Christmas tree shape, and it's a slightly different size than most of the other standard Christmas tree shapes that you can find at Dollar Tree, but I didn't want that star on top. So I just freehanded where I thought I should be cutting this to get rid of that. Just using regular scissors, I cut the star off, and then I gave it a light sanding. To add some color and character to it, I'm simply putting a light coat of antiquing wax on this tree, and then I go right over it with a baby wipe to remove any excess, and then I bust out the handy dandy heat gun, and that just kind of helps speed up the process so that it can be dry much quicker, and then I can give it a light sanding on the edges just to give it a slight distressed look. Using a 4x4 pressed canvas from the Dollar Tree, I'm just taking some scrapbook paper that I've had on hand. This came from a plaid booklet that I got from Hobby Lobby when they had their scrapbook paper at 50% off. And keeping it simple, keeping it clean and modern, I just decided to attach the tree and then create a hanger using hot glue and then reinforcing that with some packing tape. For the next project, we're going to take a triangle shape. Now, this one was left over from last year. I do see them out this year. However, you want to take a really close look because there was probably 6 on the shelf and all 6 of them were very wonky. They were not shaped right. It was so weird. They just were not a proper triangle. They were so strange. So definitely take a look. Now, I had this one left over, like I mentioned, from last year, and all I did was give it a coat of paint, added one of those decorative triangles, painted that again using my all-time favorite green color for most of my Christmas projects. And I feel that this is very clean and modern. All right, this next project's definitely not groundbreaking. However, I just wanted to show you how you can maximize one of these little trees in case you can't find 2. If you don't pick them up right away, before you know it, they're just gone. So what I did was I was just going to put it inside this cute little vase that I got for 99 cents. It was at my Kroger, and when I tried to put it in, it was a little too big, so I just cut the base down. I was shocked at how easy this cut down with just my scissors. When I'm fluffing or shaping the branches, I'm just going to put them all in an upward motion so that they're all kind of facing up, and I add a small little curve towards the end. Now all I'm doing here is just stuffing in some, a light sheet of fake snow. But what this one tree will do by placing those branches like that is, as you can see, it definitely adds just a little bit more volume to this teeny tiny little puny tree. I really wanted to do something kind of cute to, add to even the kitchen table or a little corner in the kitchen itself for kind of a hot chocolate bar. And I really liked the idea of using this set of 3 kind of graduating in size little wood crates. So to find the middle, I just draw an X on the back of each one of these, take my X-Acto knife. I did use some pressure and just kind of gently poked it through. That way I could see on the opposite side where the center was. And I did this to all of them. Now at Halloween, I found these really cool kind of like wood nunchucks or whatever they are, but I liked the wood grain of them, and I thought, well, sheesh, at the very least, they'll make pretty cool like fake logs or something, So I grabbed them, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with them until I came to this project, and I thought that these might be really neat to add for that support in the middle for the kind of trays to lay on. Now, I knew I was going to have to do something to reinforce these because they're hollow, they're very, very flimsy, and so once I got them completely, trimmed down and level, I just grabbed a jar of the tumbling tower blocks that you get at the Dollar Tree, and I just started to fill them up, and that seemed to really do the trick. So once I could figure out how to put them in there, I then just kind of I was gluing 2 together at a time and placing them inside the center of this little like stick thing, this nunchuck or whatever you call it. So I'm just trying to show you how they're lined up in there. So they're in there standing up, and then when I place them in there after they're glued together, I kind of like flip them around. So this way they're alternating as far as where the sides of the tumbling tower blocks are meeting. It's really hard to explain, and I'm sorry. I'm doing a horrible job at it. Now I did have to cut a couple of these down, and using my miter shears, it took a good squeeze, but it did cut. It wasn't really all that terrible. I do have like a really cute tabletop miter saw, but I just didn't have it connected, and I was too lazy. So we're just gonna go with the easy fix of using miter shears. If you don't have them, I would suggest considering getting those put on your Christmas list for your craft room. I originally thought hot gluing these was gonna be enough, but it just really wasn't. So I just went through my little stash of like tools and screws and nails, and I found the perfect little size spare screw, and I decided to attach all of the layers that I could using a little tiny screw. And then I went through, hot glued everything, as you can see here, and I also added some tumbling towers inside some of them, just to really make sure that this was going to be a functioning piece. I didn't want it to just look cute. I really want to be able to put packets of hot cocoa and little stir sticks and stuff in there. My original thought was, wouldn't it be cute if this just said, "Oh, Christmas tree"? And I know that, a lot of people don't have a Cricut, and so I do try to offer up some different options as far as what we can use instead. Now, I did this on a plain piece of white computer paper. I should have done this on cardstock. So what I did was I traced out that little sign. That way I knew kind of what size and where the parameters were that I needed to keep the lettering. And I just hand drew "Oh, Christmas tree." And I didn't like it. And I couldn't find any plain white cardstock. So I thought, oh, I'll write it on the actual crate, and that just looked worse. And I thought, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to have any words, I'm just gonna leave it as is. So I decided to just completely cover all sides of these little crates in my vine leaf green. And once the spackle was dry, I then just did a light sanding so that all 4 sides were covered. And here's just a couple items that I've put in there just so you could see where my intentions are headed for this little crate.
Please give this a big thumbs up. It's free to you and it helps my channel grow tremendously. I cannot thank you enough for clicking on my video and spending part of your day with me. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Take care.